Welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us. My name is Michael Greyeyes. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Theater at York University. I am speaking to you from Los Angeles, which is situated on Chumash, Tongva, Kizh, and Tataviam territories. I thank the citizens of these nations who have been here for millennia, for stewarding these lands and for allowing me to work and live on their ancestral territory. I am from Treaty 6 territory in the north. I'm a member of Muskeg Lake Cree Nation, son of George Greyeyes and Mary Jean Greyeyes, whose maiden name was Swimmer, from Sweetgrass First Nation. Welcome to the first of 4 lectures inspired by the character I play on Rutherford Falls, Terry Thomas. It was just a scant 2 years ago when I flew to Los Angeles to screen test for the role. I remember hearing about the show and the role from some friends of mine who had flown in to test for him. Then it was my turn. I remember walking through the lot at Universal, my first time on the lot actually, wondering how the hell I was going to get through the audition with my knees knocking together from the nerves. I am pretty sure I was the last person the production saw that day. It's a real test of one's resolve when you walk into an audition space, seeing your colleagues pacing in the hallway, reciting lines to themselves, exchanging stories and gossip. But then one by one, they disappear until you're the last actor in the waiting room. We're ready for you now, Michael. Gulp. But it turned out great. I made them laugh, and they were generous and kind in the room, which is always a good sign. I don't remember a lot, except that I felt confident in Terry's shoes. He was so damn cool, even in the early drafts that we were working from. In the audition, he even had a speech about when the Eastern Seaboard was covered in longhouses. He said the coolest, most badass shit. He was kind of scary too. So when my friend and my chair, Professor Marlise Schweitzer, asked if I wanted to write a few lectures or master classes on performance, I knew immediately that we had to use Terry as a conduit or focusing lens. Then it was in Altadena when we were filming the first episode of season 2 of Rutherford Falls, when Bobby Wilson, one of our great writers who also plays Wayne in the show, mentioned that his wife loves Terry's speeches. She calls them Terry Talks, he said. I was floored, and I knew that it had to be the title of these lectures. So thank you, Bobby and Natasha, for sharing that with me and allowing me to borrow it for this series. Terry Thomas is the most complex role I've ever had to play. He's usually the smartest guy in the room, except when Regan shows up. He's as tough as nails, but not nearly as tough as his wife, Renee. In fact, he's actually a great big softie, as evidenced by any interaction with his teenage daughter, Maya. But when he speaks, Terry speaks with utter authority. He speaks with the weight of ancestors behind him. He only tells the truth. And in this town, that is akin to a straight up superpower. So with this in mind, I think Terry would approve of this keynote address that I wrote in 2007. I had just joined the Faculty of Fine Arts at York, having pretty much retired from Hollywood and the art of make-believe. It was inspired by the travails of being an actor, borrowing heavily from my thesis on performance subversion from my alma mater, Kent State University in Ohio, and fueled by the album Neon Bible by Arcade Fire, which I played at a deafening volume as I wrote it. I've added an epilogue to update its scathing rebuke of the industry that I find myself now fully unretired, and one that, on occasion, I admit to myself that I love. It is titled, He Who Dreams, Reflections on an Indigenous Life in Film. Greetings and welcome colleagues, friends, Tansel and bonjour filmmakers, directors, screenwriters, critics, and scholars. Hello, cineasts, film junkies. You know who you are. If a movie comes on at 2 a.m., even if you're dead tired, you'll watch it all the way to the bitter end, all the way to the final fade out and credits, even if it's terrible, even if you've seen it before. Hi, my name is Michael, and I'm a film junkie. Hey, Michael. Hello, Mike. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a map of a human heart. This is a chalk outline. These are footprints in the snow leading to exterior night, winter. The air has a deadly chill. Lights from nearby houses and cottages cast an eerie glow through a stand of trees. 3 men are walking down a country road. The snow is hard packed underfoot. Their breath comes churning out of their mouths. Their boots squeaking against the snow. One of the men, a native man in his mid-20s, motions the others to stop. He hears something. They all stop. Close on native man. Native man. You hear that? Wide shot. The other men shake their heads. The native man listens. He hears only winter silence. Native man shaking his head. And it's gone. They start walking again, eager to get back inside to the warmth. Sound of trees cracking in the wind like bones breaking. Native man, that. The other 2 men halt, again listening intently. Something's out there. It's following us. I can hear it when we're walking, but when we stop, it stops. Cut to POV from behind the trees. Camera dollies through the woods. The trunks of trees passing in front of the lens. Thick black rectangles moving right to left across the stream. The 3 men, not altogether unaware they are being watched, start walking quickly toward the house down the road. Sound of bones breaking. The air was so cold and clear that night that the sound of our shoes hitting the hard-packed snow was echoing in the trees. Just our own footsteps bouncing off tree after tree, that's all. But it was better when I thought it was breaking bones. Toronto, 1977. National Ballet School, Maitland Street, distorted mirrors and wooden floors. The Toronto Star wrote an article about me. First native boy, a Cree from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, accepted into Canada's National Ballet School after extensive auditions across Canada. Betty O. Broken bones. Toronto, 1987. The National Ballet of Canada, 70 dancers, full orchestra, powdered wigs, Frederick Ashton and Petipa, fake mustaches and tambourines, bones breaking. Swan Lake. New York City, 1990. Breaking bones as I fell from the sky. Elliott Feld, July. So hot that I sweated through black leather ballet shoes, leaving black footprints on the Marley dance floor. Nancy, walking hand in hand down 18th Street, Astoria, Union Square, East Village. I saw Dances with Wolves on Broadway and 14th. Brown faces, 10 feet tall. Told her I wanted to be an actor. She didn't bat an eyelash. Los Angeles, 1993. Hollywood. Franklin, the 101, La Cienega, Sepulveda, Burbank. Daryl Marshak, Harry Gold, first class airfare. Scripts arriving FedEx. Breaking bones. Slate myself? Yes, just look into the camera. Tell us your name and the part you're reading for. Hi, my name is Michael Greyeyes, and I'm reading for the part of Red Cloud. The image of the Indian is a site of contestation. Within this arena, theories of racism, identity, history, language, authenticity, essentialism, post-colonialism, etc., vie for dominance, each providing an entry point into the debate, but none offering a complete picture of it. Two recent documentaries, The Bronze Screen, an analysis of Latin actors in Hollywood, and The Slanted Screen, an examination of the experience of Asian actors, bring into focus the idea that our, and I'm speaking as an actor of color, our participation in an industry devoted to emptying us out, reinscribing us as it sees fit, is problematic. That the cards are stacked against us, that the way out of the trap is to write, direct, and produce our own work. Subjectivity is the answer. This is, of course, right. Taking the reins, as it were, is a no-brainer. But being armed with a digital camera doesn't make you accomplished. How do we develop the skill sets to make lasting work? The ability to create cinema and television that can change the world doesn't usually spring from the womb. There is a system of training required. Some will call it programming, inculcation, indoctrination. But however you take it, whatever you name it, the training is needed, because before you have the right to call yourself a filmmaker, a writer, an actor, you need to train. You can't walk onto the floor at any powwow, at Skamitzen even, and call yourself a dancer just because you've got brown skin, black hair, and a flat ass. I would think that you need to practice a bit. Learn the song, earn the right. Me, I had two systems of training: a conservatory model with a good dose of on-the-job training, and the classic Indigenous model, mentorship. But we'll talk about that more later on. Okay, so you've got your diploma in hand or experience under your belt. This isn't your first barbecue. Before you run out the door to write, direct, and produce your own work, I need to mention something. I don't want to be a drag or bring you down, but let me play devil's advocate for a moment. How are you going to get your film out there? You got the thing in the can, great. I know how hard it was to raise the money, believe me. A movie about Indigenous people, made entirely by Indigenous people. Hell, they probably wanted to give you $10 to go away. Ah, great. The film festival route is excellent. American Indian Film Festival in San Fran is a great place to start. Dreamkeeper out west, fantastic. Sundance, South by Southwest, Cannes, go for it, shop it around. Dress it up nice while you're at it. Put a wig on it, nice pair of shoes. Redo the poster. Look, you've got a hunk in the lead. Have him take his shirt off. Show off those pecs, that gorgeous brown skin. What's the matter with you? What, it's an art film? What does that mean? Lots of dialogue, no plot, that you want to lose money? This is a marketplace. We work on commission. I apologize. I didn't mean to bring him out. What I meant to bring up is that without distribution, the fine work of Indigenous filmmakers, our hard-won subjectivity, will remain unseen, unheard. Without the imprimatur of studio distribution, I might never have seen Once Were Warriors, Tsotsi, Rabbit Proof Fence, Whale Rider, to name but a few international films. No problem. Making the film is a hard part. It is. Distribution, by comparison, is cake. Witness the much heralded collaboration between Sherman Alexie and Chris Eyre, Smoke Signals. It was the darling of the festival film circuit, a Miramax film with all the trimmings, and it was groundbreaking. Native characters were complex, fully problematized, and compelling. No white hero trope to bring a large-scale read white audience into the story and our communities. By 1999, Variety had announced that Miramax had signed a deal with Alexie to bring his own novel, Reservation Blues, to the screen. Months later, after swimming in the shark-infested waters, Sherman announced he was quitting the movie business. Reservation Blues replaced the forgiving tone of Smoke Signals with a more violent, angrier, and strident version. When push came to shove, Miramax wanted no part of actual Native subjectivity. The control of the Indian image remains contested. Given this reality, I propose that the work of Native actors in mainstream film and television is akin to the work of undercover cops, like double agents in a Le Carré novel, moles deep in the studio system, working from the inside. Hi, my name is Michael Greyeyes, and I'm reading for the part of Crazy Horse. This is the chalk outline of a Native actor at the crossroads of internationalism, free trade, and false consciousness. What's a Cree boy from the Capel Valley to do? Ella Shohat and Robert Stam write that for Donald Bogle, the history of Black performance is one of battling against confining stereotypes and categories, thus subaltern performance and codes, often in sanitized, ambiguous ways, what James C. Scott calls the hidden transcripts of a subordinated group. At their best, Black performance undercuts stereotypes by individualizing the type or slyly standing above it. Furthermore, Bogle emphasizes the resilient image of Black performers obliged to play against script and studio intentions, their capacity to turn demeaning roles into resistant performance, breaking bones to fit into tight shoes. This is a map of an actor's heart. One man's perspective, not typically myopic and narcissistic. We, as actors of color, don't have that luxury. We have burdens to carry, but it's not all uphill. We have gifts too. We have mentors, trail cutters, those who have walked before us into the deep drifts so that we might journey more easily. This is a woefully incomplete list of previous generations of Native performers who opened and in some cases broke down doors for my generation. Their names are Jay Silverheels, Chief Dan George, August Schellenberg, Tantu Cardinal, Will Sampson, George Clutesy, Lois Red Elk, Gary Farmer, Denis Lacroix, Margot Kane, Gordon Tatusis, Michael Horse, Jimmy Herman, Graham Greene, Johnny Yesno, and many others. Their contributions to changing cinema are perhaps not fully documented, but in time should be recognized as analogous to the work that other performers of color did for their own communities. Sesu Hayakawa, Paul Robeson, Dorothy Dandridge, Mako, Dolores Del Rio, and Sidney Poitier. I am fortunate to have already worked with many of these Indigenous actors, and their role in my career development has been substantial and ongoing. In fact, my relationship with three of them in particular, Schellenberg, Cardinal, and Lacroix, exemplify the benefits of emerging from within Indigenous culture and from a Native acting community. Foremost is that all three embrace their role as mentors and teachers. Just as they were taught, so too have they taught in turn. August Schellenberg, for example, has taken me under his wing from the first film we worked together. Within an hour of meeting him, Augie taught me how to hit a mark. Back then, I didn't even know what a mark was, let alone how to hit it, and shared with me his understanding of the differences between acting for stage and film. They in turn were influenced by the previous generation, especially Chief Dan George. Lacroix recalls seeing Dan George as old Antoine on Caribou Country. I'd been to Lillooet and I remember the people from the bush. I remember how they walked and talked. I says, my God, they got this on film, finally. They're smiling, joking, their little asides, the physical way they relate to each other. And so much of the mannerism is still from the culture, the heritage, even though they may have gone to residential school, but you could see from the parents to the children, you could still see it. You could still see the connection closer to the grandparents. It wasn't wiped out. Here, the expression of social dynamics, so often and dramatically absent in subsequent representations of Native people, was a clear subversion by these Native actors, revealing the hidden transcripts of that community, piggybacked on radio waves into mainstream homes and minds. These actors, friends, emerged as artists during the 60s. This, of course, was the time of the revisionist Western, the time of Little Big Man and Tell Them Willie Boy is here. It doesn't take a master's degree to figure out that during this period, the savage, noble Indian was being emptied out. Again, replaced this time by a radical deconstruction of the Indian image by writers and filmmakers from the counterculture. But just as colonial America used the Indian in its search for a national identity, so too did Vietnam-era America seek to recast itself and invoke a hoped-for regeneration through the Indian symbol. Resist the reinscription. Subvert the stereotype. Restate the truth that was replaced by the stereotype. Tantu Cardinal told me, what I do then is go back to my community, back to my experience, back to the women that raised me, the women I knew growing up. They've always been the inspiration for what I've done. And sometimes I would feel images that were coming from other places that were not from the community. Constantly, you have to watch what's been programmed into you before you even knew that there was such a thing as programming. The grammar of this reinscription appears in many forms. The most common, of course, comes from period movies, the cultural misinformation, the stilted dialogue, the recycled, often inaccurate costumes, wigs, and war paint, the cliched settings, the ponderous, solemn physicality, all of which has become accepted and unchallenged behavior. This is the overt transcript that piggybacked on radio waves to Poland, England, France, Australia, Korea, South Africa. As if that wasn't bad enough, these tropes have proven especially damaging when a native actor is unconsciously influenced by them. Lacroix notes, people kept taken away from their strength, what made them. They dissolved it slowly, and it becomes like a ghost of themselves. The tactics of subversion by native actors are numerous and sophisticated. A prime example of this is the action taken by the native cast, the cultural advisors, and even some of the non-native cast in changing the script for Bruce Beresford's 1991 film, Black Robe. Both Schellenberg and Cardinal remember turning down the project numerous times because of the script before finally accepting. Their reason for ultimately accepting was pragmatic. Both actors knew that the film was going to be made with or without their participation, and they believed it was better to allow their status and reputations to guide the film to a more accurate representation. A decision prompted by the assurance of the filmmakers that key changes would be made before filming. This change on the part of the producer should be recognized as unique. Perhaps the discourse of resistance was more familiar to these filmmakers who live in Australia, where the Aboriginal cultures themselves are involved in a very public struggle to recuperate elements of their culture. Or perhaps it was the willingness of the native cast, the cultural advisors, and the entire community of background actors to walk off the set if their contributions were ignored. Clearly, each instance of subversion must be weighed within the context of the project itself, but Lacroix, Cardinal, and Schellenberg all agree that it is vital to establish and protect dialogue as the principal means of opening the minds of the director, the writers, and the producers. It is there that a vital negotiation can take place, a negotiation that can drag an entire production, sometimes kicking and screaming, toward native subjectivity. Hi, my name is Michael Greyeyes. I'm auditioning for the role of Grey Eagle. Making period movies is a tricky thing. First of all, it is an exercise in absurdity from morning till night. Even finding a place to film such a thing is problematic. For example, where does one go to find untouched prairie nowadays? The pristine. Where do you find open prairie without power lines and cell towers? Well, there is open prairie in the Dakotas and Montana, but it lies on gigantic ranches owned by a few powerful ranchers, robber barons. As for being untouched, one might easily argue the owners touched it all right, stole it, if we can speak frankly, with their grubby pink little fingers, piece by piece. I apologize. I didn't mean to bring him out. What I meant to bring up was that it was a beautiful morning as we drove down a rutted road, and there were 5 tall, gorgeous teepees walking along a ridge, like upside down ice cream cones. The teepees were painted with striking geometric designs and pictographs, with their tops open and blackened by the smoke from many fires. Yes, I said walking, magically. Actually, upon closer inspection, we could see about 5 pairs of feet inside each teepee, shuffling along. Talking to the crew later, I found out that was the easiest way to transport the teepees from one filming location to the next. And hey, you got to have teepees. Teepees and horses. If you've got Indians, you better have horses, even if none of the cast knows which end is which. My name is Michael Greyeyes, and I'm reading for the part of Man Afraid of His Horses. Pardon me. Can I ride? Yeah, I can ride. I broke horses for a living. This is not entirely a lie, as I used to drop miniature plastic horses down our toaster. I had to learn how to ride horses for all the period films I did. My dance background helped me immensely. I became good at it. I remember we filmed a sequence where my character, Crazy Horse, was hunting buffalo. They herded a small group of buffalo, about 20 or so, which were meant to stand in for thousands. Imagine a prairie made black by their sheer numbers. My blood was up. There were 5 cameras rolling on the shot. I had to ride bareback, shoot a bow and arrow, and control my horse, which was made extremely skittish by the buffalo. And everybody knows how unpredictable and ornery buffaloes are. Since it took about a half hour to round up the buffalo, they used pickup trucks. Every shot was doubly precious. My horse was a movie horse. Let me explain. He knew all the calls that announced an upcoming shot. You know, quiet on the set. Pictures up. By the time they called rolling or action, he was apoplectic and would nearly buck me off. So they had to develop silent hand signals to announce so we could get the shots we needed. His name was Whiskey, playing Crazy Horse for Turner Network Television. I rode a horse called Whiskey. True story. When the buffalo came over the edge, the stunt riders formed a phalanx around me, but it didn't matter. My horse knew what to do, as if it was programmed for this. It flew across the prairie grass. Its speed was absolutely terrifying. When I let the reins down on the horse's neck to shoot my bow, it realized it was free and went into an even higher gear, an altogether and hitherto unimaginable speed. The horse tracked down one of the lead buffalo. I was riding next to it, 15 feet away. I shot my arrow. It flew just a few inches above the animal's back, just as I intended, buried itself into the soft ground near the cameras. The buffalo chase sequence lasted maybe 40 seconds. It was the most intensely satisfying Indian experience I'd ever had. The other stunt riders were just as flushed as I was. We had recaptured something authentic. Later, I saw one of the native stuntmen, Scotty, one of the serious horse riders from around Browning, Montana, fall to the ground during a shot. Something went wrong, and a horse fell on top of him. Hundreds of pounds lying on him. The crew began to panic. He stayed completely calm. And until the end of the shot, the horse was lifted off of him, and he stood up, dusting himself off. I realized in that moment that this Indian man had a skill set, a way of knowing and acting, which I couldn't even begin to approach. The authenticity of my portrayal, my identity, fell away from me like a rag. I acknowledged my tourist's gaze. Rosemary Bank, in her examination of the 1893 Columbian exhibition in Chicago, described ethnographic reenactment as a conflation of real and faux. There is no better way to describe Indian period films. An uneasy mix of the authentic and the plastic. You know, given their druthers, I don't imagine many Indigenous filmmakers would make period films, but the studios still do. The Western is cyclic, comes and goes, they tell us. But conversely, and publicly unacknowledged, the historical Indian image doesn't go anywhere. It has been commodified and entrenched within the Hollywood repertoire, emptied out, reinscribed. But at least as performers in these reenactments, we are now co-writers in the event. The continual process of reinventing the Indian doesn't only occur in period films. The modern transformations are equally loaded with assumption, bald-faced ignorance, or simple wishful thinking. Hi, my name is Michael Greyeyes, and I'm reading for the part of Thomas Harris. In the audition rooms of LA, actually the hallways outside the casting office or in the parking lots, the group I affectionately refer to as the usual suspects congregate, trade information, gossip. It is here that our community is reformed, literally, outside of the studio gaze. It was here one morning that Michael Horse was talking to me, mentoring me. He said, back in the 70s, it was me, Joe Running Fox, and a few others. We were the young guns then, and we'd meet out here too. You didn't even have to read the breakdown because it was the same thing all the time. Hey, Joe, what's the deal? Indian radical protesting the desecration of ancient burial grounds. You know, what else? Today, Michael Horse told me it's the same thing, just a slightly different setting. Now it's all about casinos. We're lawyers, floor managers, bankers, tribal chairmen, heads of security, and we're divided by it. Some of us want the casinos. Some of us don't. Does the mainstream public honestly believe that our internal discourse can be reduced to such a simple binary? I don't know, maybe they do. Hi, my name is Michael Greyeyes. I'm reading for the part of a slick, self-assured lawyer representing the interests of a wealthy casino-owning tribal nation. This is an actual breakdown for a role that I auditioned for. The following contains meeting information for CSI Miami, role Reggie Vance, late 30s, early 40s, Native American, elegant, Southwest attire. He's the CEO of a casino who's being blackmailed by Scott O'Shea into being a silent partner in a major casino investment scheme. He is murdered by his wife, Adrian, after she discovers he's been seeing the call girl, Anna Savaro. Guest star. Nan Dutton casting. When I read the breakdown to my wife, she just shook her head. I got the part. In the end, though, they couldn't meet my quote, my asking price. Whatever that means. It's one of the richest shows on television. Jerry Bruckheimer is one of the producers. Yeah, they probably went Hispanic. Which brings me to another point. How does this casting thing work exactly? The American audience wants tall, lean Indians with brown faces and high cheekbones. Translation, a small subset of Plains types. Crees, Blackfeet, Crow, Lakota. This has been the case since the colonial period. The Plains cultures have always fired the imagination of the public here, at home, and abroad. A few years ago, I and the usual suspects auditioned for a film project called The Crow, Wicked Prayer, cast by Mackie Sandrich Casting. The two leads were Native. Lily ignites the dawn, 21 years old, stunningly beautiful with raven black hair and radiant blue eyes, of mixed Native American, Hispanic, and European heritage. A traditionalist, Lily is disgusted by her father's attempt to build an Aztec pyramid resort casino. Another part, Tanner, mid-20s. Lily's brother, Tanner, is the local sheriff on the reservation of Native American, Hispanic, and European heritage. Nowhere in the script is there a reference to the mixed heritage of this supposed tribe. So for all intents and purposes, an audience will perceive this community as bona fide or authentic. The filmmakers are having their cake and eating it too. They provide local color to their film by bringing their audience to an exoticized locale and exotic, beautiful characters, but have the right to cast absolutely anyone in the role, the Indians. The big problem with such casting is that non-native actors with no vested interest in the depiction of this community, since they do not belong to it, nor have to return to it later to explain themselves, will allow their characterizations to be shaped wholesale by a writer or director. The burden of responsibility has been removed, and resistance to or even outright subversion of stereotypes has been compromised by the removal of native actors in native roles. Interior, day, casting office. A self-absorbed director and pompous producer of The Crow, Wicked Prayer sit opposite a native man in his early 30s. A casting assistant operates a camera. The Los Angeles sunshine comes streaming through the window, casting a pleasant glow upon the proceedings. Director. So what did you think of the script? Native actor. It was a piece of shit. Why? Did you think it was good? The director and producer look shocked that the native talks back. They didn't know what to say. Cut to reality. I actually, and shamefully, told them that I loved the script. Wrong answer, even to them. They knew it was shit. Everybody knew. Acting is about speaking the truth, particularly when no one else dares to. The authenticity of my identity as an artist fell away from me like a rag. Why do we do it? Put ourselves through it. Well, it's not all a drag. It's fun, actually, and the money's great. The Chinese have a proverb about marriage, which holds true for the pay of the movie business. They say, when you marry for money, you earn it. But there is a tremendous nobility to our roles as performers. We join a long line of resistance fighters, deflecting or absorbing prejudice, subverting misguided intentions, or encoding our performances with our hidden transcripts, so that when these images come across your televisions or grace the screens of your movie houses, the sight of the Indian remains hotly contested, and we neither give nor take any quarter. Hi, my name is Michael Greyeyes, and I'm reading for the part of Epilogue. Hello, my name is Michael Greyeyes. I'm reading for the part of Terry Thomas. As I reread this keynote, I was stunned by its idiosyncrasies. Audition rooms, LOL. Who the hell does a live audition nowadays? It's all self-tapes. And even if there was a callback, who the hell would undertake the kind of testing to make sure that being in such close proximity in the same room wouldn't infect or kill everyone participating in the process? But I do recognize what has changed and what remains the same. As I compare the landscapes of Tinsel Town between then and now, I still recognize the importance of performance subversion of the 90s and early 2000s, and of course in the 100 years prior to that. But that approach is so painfully circumscribed. Why the hell should it be incumbent only on the Indigenous actor to speak truth to power? Aren't they already on precarious footing as it is? And in such a system, the Indigenous actor is literally the last bloody line of defense to a racist or stereotypical trope. Some glaringly inaccurate idea or notion about us as Indians made it out of the writer's room, past the showrunner, past the studio, past a slew of execs and producers, past the director, And you expect the native actor to stand up, raise that lonely hand and say, hold on, everyone. You can't say this. Some poor skin in a buckskin dress or loincloth or snazzy suit or denim skirt and a cowboy hat, holding back 500 years of bullshit history about us. I think even you, my friends, can see the utter folly of this. Performance subversion can only go so far when the very DNA of a project is already corrupted. But now, at this moment, I find myself sitting on the other side of history. It's 2022, and I'm in Hollywood, the belly of the beast itself. And I'm working on the second season of Rutherford Falls, a paradigm-shifting show whose showrunner is Indigenous. Sierra Teller Ornelas is a damn genius. And she's lifting the rest of us onto her shoulders and commanding us to fly. God damn it, fly. And we've got writers' rooms staffed by the largest number of Indigenous writers hitherto ever gathered. We've always had the talent to do this. Always. It was just opportunity. That was the missing piece. It was a natural progression for our writers to begin re-engineering Hollywood from the inside. Then directors began to emerge, furthering Indigenous authorial privilege from a vaunted position in the industry, one historically staffed by white men. And now we have creatives, decision makers, who dream up a show in the first place, pitch it to the highest echelons of power and money, and carry that idea on their backs through 1,000 meetings and endless pandemics until it lands on your tablet or phone, traveling through cyberspace, carrying a new message. The transcripts are no longer hidden. The truth of us is layered into each page, each character description, into each speech, every smile and tender aside, into wicked slapbacks and wit so sharp it'll cut through chainmail. That is what has changed for me. I'm not alone anymore. My hand raised in protest heals at the edge of some precipice. Instead, I'm on sets where the genetic cultural information on the page is secure, uncorrupted, where often the director is also native and they have my back and the backs of the other artists they brought in. And behind that director are our showrunners, Sterling, Taika, and Sierra, a new kind of trail cutter, ensuring that the cinematic worlds we are creating are full and resonant and Indigenous. And the stories that get told are better. They're funnier and smarter. And by sharing the load, the burden of representation, actors like myself are freed. Free from being unpaid cultural consultants, or worse, double agents in projects that we love/hate. And what does that freedom mean? It means we're allowed to act. Just act. I've been in the game for a long, long time. I think younger actors must look at me and think, shit, I grew up watching that dude. I've worked with the legends. And to be honest, work back then was kind of hairy. So I've seen a lot of those ups and downs, the disappointments, the hopes dashed, the dreams deferred. But something has changed. This past year, for the first time in recent memory, our work as artists is being recognized by organizations outside of our own communities. Reservation Dogs won a Gotham Award for Best New Series. Devery Jacobs, Mohawk, and myself, Nihia, were nominated for Best Performance alongside some of the biggest names in our biz. Now, Janice Schmieding, who plays Regan Wells on Rutherford Falls, has been nominated for Best Female Performance in a New Scripted Series for an Independent Spirit Award, the Oscars of independent film and TV. And I too have been honored for my work as Terry Thomas and for my leading role in the feature film Wild Indian by Anishinaabe writer-director Lyle Mitchell Corbijn Jr. Wild Indian was also nominated for Best First Feature, Best First Screenplay, and Chaske Spencer for Best Supporting Actor. Last year, I was awarded a Canadian Screen Award for Outstanding Performance in a Leading Role. I won Best Actor for Blood Quantum, a film by Mi'kmaq writer-director Jeff Barnaby that swept the CSAs last year, winning 7 awards in total. Is it long overdue? Hell yeah, it is. But it also tells me something really, really important. If we, as artists of color, in whichever role we find ourselves, actor, writer, director, producer, are allowed to drill down into our craft instead of putting out cultural fires, we do pretty good for ourselves in comparison to our industry colleagues. And I know on a very personal level that I've toiled quietly for decades across a number of great projects. But the most acclaim I have ever received for my performance work has come from Blood Quantum, Wild Indian, and Rutherford Falls, all projects with Indigenous creative leads. And what this has taught me, what Jeff, Lyle, and Sierra have taught me, is that when we lift each other, carry each other, we are better. My name is Michael Greyeyes, and I'm reading for a boundless future with my kin beside me. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. What a beautiful, beautiful presentation today. I have so many thoughts, so many questions. I see already in our Q&A, we have some questions as well. So we have maybe about 9 minutes or so. We know that those of us who are into Toronto today, it's getting close to, well, not quite bedtime, but it's getting up there. But we're so happy to have, I saw in the chat someone from Denmark. Welcome to everybody from wherever. It's so lovely to see you later in Denmark. So thank you for joining us. So let me start with this question, which kind of connects, I think, really, really nicely to your some of the themes you've been drawing out here. This is from Margaret. She writes, they write, Real Engine, Neil Diamond, 2009, was a good documentary on natives in Hollywood, but is dated. Would you be interested in creating a more contemporary one?
Yeah, that's good. I liked Real Engine. I thought it was great. I thought it was really great. And I think projects like that are really, I think, super important. I don't consider myself a documentary filmmaker. The sort of documentary work I do is in my scholarship. Like I love to write, and I think films like that are essential in helping people see what is made a little bit invisible by the sort of hegemonic media culture. Like, for example, examinations of whiteness. Like, whiteness is invisible. It's meant to be invisible, so that when you have things that are not white, then they become othered. And I think documentaries like that remind us of that othering is abnormal. But yeah, no, I love Real Engine. It was a lot of fun. And in terms of Rage Fuel storyline, no, I don't think so. We were thinking about it, but maybe season 3.
That's great. So, and please encourage others to add your questions to the chat. I have one for you, Michael, which just thinking about your career. I mean, you mentioned this in your chat as well, beginning as a dancer, moving into theater and other acting, and you've now acted from different kinds of screens in television and on film, and you move back and forth between those worlds. You yourself are also a director of theater. Are you noticing that the sort of larger transitions and transformations, are they happening in the same way, at the same pace in both television and film and theater? Are you observing differences in the different sort of industries? And if so, what are those differences?
I think you have to look at cases on almost like a case-by-case basis. Like, for example, I was approached by Stratford, one of our grand institutions up in Canada, to work on a really exciting Cree reinterpretation of Macbeth by Renelta Arluk. And that kind of a project has like such tremendous potential. And we were heading into workshop phase, and then of course the world shut down because of the pandemic. And I actually don't know what's happening with that project. So on a case-by-case basis, you could look at theater projects and this sort of reckoning where professional theater, certainly in Canada, certainly in the United States as well, the kind of programming that one would consider sort of like historically typical denies voices. And then you look at how audiences are built in theater and you go, well, why is it that our audiences are predominantly older, wealthier, white, they're not very diverse? And it's like, well, look at the programming. And then you look at who makes the programming, who are on the board of directors. So you see all sorts of systemic issues which create a normal that's very abnormal, right? So I think theater has its own kinds of problems in terms of attracting diverse talent and certainly diverse audiences. Film and television is its own thing. I always call Hollywood the 800-pound gorilla, because the 800-pound gorilla, it's like, it's great if, the 800-pound gorilla is like with you, but also like, if the 800-pound gorilla doesn't want to do that, like, what do? It's like, the gorilla is just going to tear you to pieces, right? So you sort of, it's like, it's a balance, like power, money, voice. You really have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. So in some cases, you have real allies inside a production. You have a willingness to elevate, different voices inside, the power structure of that particular production. But what I've seen with Rutherford Falls, on an intimate level, because I'm in the production and I see it, is that when we have decision makers who are native, who come from our communities, it filters down in so many ways. Like, it's almost like it's hard to document how many things we get right because Sierra is running the show. It's cultural. It's not about the color of our skins. It's about cultural information and access to actual ontological realities.
That's wonderful. Thank you. We probably have time maybe for one or two more questions. I see there's one from Julie here I could read out. Which actors and directors would you like to collaborate with that you haven't had a chance to work with yet?
Oh, gosh, there's so many. Of course, I'd love to work with Sterling. I met him at the Gothams when we were in New York City. I was actually in the bathroom, and Sterling and I have sort of met for we've never physically met, but we know each other and know each other's work. We met each other in the men's bathroom at the Gotham Awards in New York City, which was hilarious. So I'd love to work with him. Taika, of course, Taika Waititi, brilliant filmmaker, producer, creator. I've started to connect with some really incredibly talented, skilled artists. Sydney Freeland is an incredible director. She directed, I think 3 episodes for us last year. She was unable to work with us this year because she was booked. Like, she's working so much. So it's really delightful, young up and coming directors, people like Rizal Benali, whom I'm building a relationship with, and hopefully we'll be able to make some movies. Lyle Mitchell Corbijn Jr., of course, he's an extraordinary talent. People like Jeff Barnaby, can't wait to work with Jeff again. So yeah, there's I'm in a really fortunate position, that I'm working, I've unretired myself, and I'm finding opportunities again.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I see we are at 10 o'clock. There are a couple, are there any other questions, Michael, there that you want to answer? If not, we can kind of hold on to these. This is the first of 4 talks, so there will be many more opportunities to answer these questions. So I don't know, is there anything else, Michael? Is it sort of final question you would like to answer?
Let me see. I just going through some of the things. It's interesting. There's a comment about Woman Walks Ahead, which was really lovely film that I was able to work on, and someone asked, that performance was overlooked for an Oscar. That's another thing that's actually quite fascinating to me, is how awards are constructed. And again, it's a systemic problem. If you look at something like the Oscars or the Emmys, these are massive awards. Grammys, Tonys, the big 4, as it were, BAFTAs, etc. Those kinds of awards. Indigenous actors have been excluded from the winner's podium for a long, long time. Not because Indigenous actors have not contributed brilliant performances. Like, for example, I firmly believe that Wes Studi, great Cherokee actor, should have won an Oscar, for his performance as Magua in Last of the Mohicans. Graham Greene was nominated twice. He should have won, extraordinary actor. People like Gary Farmer, August Schellenberg, Tantu Cardinal. These are actors that should have been multiple, Emmy winners, multiple Oscar winners, but they are not so recognized because, as I've discovered with something like Wild Indian and Rutherford Falls, awards are actually elections in a way. They're not really competitions or the kinds of meritocracy, merit-based awards that you would think they are. Like for example, the Academy. There are different academies that run the Emmys, academies that run the Oscars. Those are membership driven awards. So in other words, if enough members say, Michael Greyeyes should be nominated, then the numbers sort of bear out. I'll have enough people to say it that it's like I've got, a ratio of people, enough people to say, yes, I'm one of the nominees. And then, of course, then they would vote on those, 5 men or those 5 women or whatever it would be. The only problem is that it's like a political election. It's like, who do you vote for? Oh, well, I like so-and-so. I've always liked so-and-so. So, and you cast your lonely vote for that person. Actually, it's studios that spend literally millions of dollars. For example, I will not be nominated for an Oscar for Wild Indian, even though I've been nominated for Spirit Awards, Gotham Awards, because in order to be nominated to win an Oscar, your studio has to pay a $12,000 fee to even be considered. So if your production doesn't have a lot of money, or it's an independent film, or your studio refuses to spend the money, you will simply never win. So there's that fee. Like Critics' Choice is, I think, $6,000. So a studio has to pay $6,000 for you to even be considered as a nominee. Then they have to actually spend lots of money on FYC ads. So those are called for-your consideration ads. So they actually have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep having your name, your face, brilliant performance, mesmerizing, all these in front of voters until finally they go, until you literally bombard the membership with so much money that they go, oh my God, I've heard that performance is incredible. And then they vote for them. So, those are elections. So I'm actually finding out quite a bit about, because I'm really, so incredibly honored by these recent nominations. But again, that sort of implies, it's like, where are we at in terms of the progression towards equanimity, sort of like a level playing field? Well, there's no level playing field. It's always about money. It's always about power. It's always about access. That's something that's quite interesting when someone asks about Woman Walks Ahead. There was no chance that I would ever have won an Oscar, because there has to be some sort of a massive campaign of hundreds of thousands of dollars to put that performance forward, and many films just don't have access to that kind of money.
Thank you, Michael. That's really illuminating. You promised that you would be revealing the secrets of Hollywood, and you have delivered. So thank you so much for that. Just for those who are here tonight, if you haven't already signed up for the next 3 weeks, I've just put the link in the chat there. You can go on now and sign up for the next 3 weeks. We look forward to welcoming you back. Thank you again, Michael, for sharing tonight and for giving us such wonderful food for thought. Any closing words before we close the Zoom?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for participating, for joining, spending some time with me. I'm truly honored by your interest and your presence. I can't wait for the next 3 lectures. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think they're going to be less like keynotes and more like conversations, more like what we're doing. But I look forward to seeing you next week.
Well, thanks, Michael. And I'm going to close the chat and the text in 3, 2, 1. Thanks. Have a great night, everybody.